Hello, one and all, and welcome on into the Good Hacks pod. He's Tim, I'm Max. You guys know that by now. If you're watching us on Twitter or YouTube, you can see it's really, really hot. We're fanning ourselves. We've got sweat stains.
Really?
Our hair just looks a mess.
Well, that's no surprise for me.
But, Tim, I'm not talking about the weather. I'm talking about the playoff races in the National League and the American League. They are heating up, folks. So we're just going to cut right to the chase here. We're going to start with the Buenhombre of the week, a segment that has been dormant for a couple of weeks now.
I suppose.
But we're bringing it back, and it's rearing its ugly head. We're starting with Stephen Strasburg. He is the Buenhombre of the week. And we're going to get to a little bit of an intricate, very unique stat that he put up yesterday. But let's start with his first two starts since the All-Star break. Comes out of the break. He's got the first start for the Nationals up against the Phillies. They go on and win 4-0. He shuts them out 6 flat, 7 hits, no earned runs, 6 Ks, 111 innings. 111 pitches. Yep. Next start out, 5 1/3 against the Braves, 3 earned runs, 7 Ks, 106 innings pitched. They win that game. I believe it was 13-4.
Okay.
So the Nationals come out of the break. They're scorching hot. Strasburg, even hotter. He's doing a tremendous job. Scherzer is right now down with an injury, and he is really solidifying his spot as, I guess, the 2 in their rotation.
Okay.
But the reason why he is the Buenhombre of the week, because the Buenhombre of the week is not just normal statistics. We like to focus on the most fun stuff that we can in baseball. So, in this game against the Braves, Stephen Strasburg, at the plate, went 3 for 3, 5 ribeyes, a homer, 2 other hits, and he had 7 Ks on the mound. So, you're wondering, when was the last time that's ever happened? So, since runs batted in became an official statistic in 1920, which is quite a few years ago.
Long time ago.
Almost a century
Yeah, that's
ago.
true.
Well, I guess they got to celebrate that in some way.
The 100-year anniversary of the RBI.
Of the RBI, yeah.
Sure. They'll celebrate it by it becoming less important to the normal baseball fan than ever before.
That Little League RBI, the Little League for, less privileged.
You
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe they'll give everybody like a birthday cake.
Okay, I'd take it.
100 years. Anyways,
Sure.
I digress. Since RBI became an official stat in 1920, only 2 other players have had 3 hits, 5 RBIs, and 7 strikeouts on the mound. Wes Ferrell in 1936 went off.
Sure.
And then in 2007, Micah Owings, a name you probably have not heard since 2007, he also did this. And further, Strasburg is the 5th pitcher in the last 50 years to get 2 hits in a single inning.
Yeah.
I didn't mention that. The home run and another hit came in the 3rd inning of that game. A 3-run home run and then another hit. Only 4 other people have done that, and it's the first time since a friend of the pod, Edwin Jackson, did it in 2010. Now, Tim and I have no idea which team Edwin Jackson was on at that point.
There are 14 to choose from.
Right, and we chose not to look it up just to spice things up. We're not even going to guess, because who knows?
I'm literally half the league.
Right. So, first of all, and Tim, I'm going to throw it to you here. Has Strasburg proven that if everybody's healthy, and by everybody I mean Scherzer, right, Strasburg, Corbin, do they have, if not the best, at least a top three in their rotation?
Man, I don't know if it's in the top 3, but it might be. If everybody is healthy and playing up to their capability. I think it's easy to overreact, but Stephen Strasburg's body of work this year, even in slightly limited action, it's impressive enough. I think that if he can solidify himself for Davey Martinez and the rest of the Nationals as their number 2, which is a big question mark, I'm not sure. I think he and Patrick Corbin are both debatable 2.5s, meaning between 2s and 3s in a starting rotation.
Well, you're not a Patrick Corbin guy.
I'm not.
You're not a huge fan.
No, I'm not. And I thought that the Nationals overpaid him a little bit. But he's been good this year. There's no doubt. So I think if Strasburg can go back to what he was, now look, he's been an ace in the past. He was the ace before they brought in Scherzer, obviously, at one point. So if he can become a strong number 2 behind a guy that is as good as Max Scherzer has been for pretty much his entire career, going to be another top 5 Cy Young year for Scherzer, I don't think that's out of the question at all. So if Strasburg can become that number 2, I think Corbin's a great option as a number 3.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know. I don't like him as a number 2 personally. I'd like to see him do this again next year for a team with the expectations that the Nationals usually have. That I might come around. But as it stands right now, if Strasburg can become that solid number 2 behind Scherzer, that is a really, really strong 1, 2, 3.
So the Nationals have moved past the days of Tanner Roark and Gio Gonzalez and Tyson Ross. You really have to focus on these 3 pitchers because after that, their rotation gets severely worse, in my humble opinion. Anibal Sanchez is their pseudo 4th starter. And I mean, you have to just ride hot streaks with this kind of team because, like I said, Scherzer's hurt, so Strasburg is the ace right now, and he's playing like it. But I mean, Eric Fedde is their 5th by default.
Right, and this is his 2nd full year in the majors.
Right. So we talked about this on both of our low-budget breakdowns where we tried to predict who's going to be making the playoffs and what will transpire all the way through the World Series. And the both of us have the Nationals not only in the wild card game, but winning the wild card game. Both of us said that it was because of Max Scherzer. Yeah. But the reason that we're talking about Strasburg is right now that let's say the Nationals get to that wild card game, and we can assume that they will win. Obviously, anything can happen, but you'd like to have faith in Scherzer.
Right. We assume that would be the matchup against whoever they play in the National League wildcard. And we'll talk a little bit more about that race in a second. But if that's the situation, we imagine that Scherzer would get the nod, and we imagine they would win the game.
And I'll preface this by saying that since the 16th of June, the Nationals are 19-6. That's the best in the bigs. They have a .721 winning percentage since May the 24th, and since May 24th, they've increased their playoff odds from 3.8%, so there's no way they're going to make the playoffs, to now over 50%, 57.7%.
Okay.
So still not a given, but Tim and I, we're assuming that they're going to make the playoffs. We're assuming they're going to win that wild card game. What happens when they play the Dodgers? Because I think that you have to put the Dodgers up there with another tremendous 1, 2, 3.
I think that might be the best 1, 2, 3 in the league. I mean, we've talked about the Astros already before on this podcast. They also I think have a stake to that claim. But I think when you look at how good Hyunjin Ryu has been this year for the Dodgers, pretty much out of nowhere, he's been really solid in his career, but taking that extra step to become probably the National League Cy Young front runner, not something that anybody, especially me, would have predicted. So if he's now, you talked in the past, obviously, about the Dodgers. You have Clayton Kershaw at the head of the pack, and then quote unquote everybody else. How are you going to fill out that rotation? That's not the case anymore. I think you could make the argument that Clayton Kershaw will go into the playoffs because the Dodgers are going to be there probably as the top team in the National League. I'd be surprised if that's not the case. I think you could make the argument that Kershaw is your number 3 in that rotation behind Ryu and Walker Buehler. Yeah. I think there's every chance that he would start game 2 in a series. So you might have him available later on, but we could talk more about that as we get closer. But that's your 1, 2, 3 in some order, and that is formidable to say the very least.
He's just never really been consistent in the playoffs. If I'm Dave Roberts, put Hyunjin Ryu out there in game 1 and ride the hot hand. Don't just assume since Kershaw's been around longer that he'll be able to pull it together.
Sure,
but those two teams, that series, if that ends up happening, it's safe to say that the Dodgers will have the best record and they will face the wild card winner. If the Nationals end up getting there, which they've come out of the break incredibly hot, and we've talked about a couple different teams, and we'll get to them, that needed to come out of the All-Star break really hot and play well. The Nationals win a series against the Phillies, an electric series. They split with the Orioles, which you'd love to take 2 there, but whatever. And now they just took care of business against the Braves, like I said, on Thursday, and now they have 3 more against the Braves heading into the weekend before they get back home for over a week at Nationals Park,
Sure.
which you'd like to think that they can continue to go off at home as well. That series, a Dodgers-Nationals series, I think could be incredibly fun and could be incredibly hotly contested in the sense that the Nationals' offense is playing well right now. You know that the Dodgers have an incredible offense, and both of these teams have great pitching.
Yeah.
So we both picked the Dodgers to win the World Series in our low-budget breakdowns. I'll throw that out there. But with the way that Strasburg is pitching right now, you have to consider Washington in that series. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. Then now the difference is that if you put everything else as relatively equal, if you decide that it's a toss-up between those first three starters, and it might be, and you decide that it's more or less a toss-up between the lineups, now you've got to look at everything else that's left out. So now you're looking at other starters, and for me, more importantly, the bullpen.
The bullpen.
And if you look at those two categories, I think the scales tip drastically in favor of the Dodgers.
Right.
So if you look at, in theory, other starters, because first and foremost, you don't know if somebody's going to get hurt or struggle. Seems unlikely, but possible. And then also, I think even in a 5-game series, you might need a fourth starting pitcher. Because of how things play out in scheduling, I don't know exactly how it would work. There's a chance, if you're the Dodgers, you might start the guy who starts in Game 1 into Game 4. Not guaranteed, especially if you have the lead. Maybe if you're up, 2-1, you can afford, quote-unquote, a fourth starter in that Game 4. So if that happens to be the case, regardless of, the situation, I think the Dodgers are in much better shape. Rich Hill is hurt right now. He's expected to come back in September, so we'll see. But right now, they've got Kenta Maeda and Ross Stripling as inferior 4 and 5. And you've got Julio Urias, who is coming back from injury, and they're really, giving him baby steps, I guess, to come back in. He started in the past, so he's a guy who can at least give you a couple of innings if needed. So those are 2.5 guys right there. Throw in Hill maybe in the conversation if he's okay. Guys that could start a fourth game if needed, or could bail out Kershaw.
Right, a long reliever
exactly.
type of appearance.
So,
sure.
And I don't think that the Nationals have anybody like that right now.
Absolutely.
Jeremy Hellickson is on the team. He's on the 60-day injured list. I don't know too much about his status. And he wasn't honestly that great for them this year anyway. So then you're left with the two guys you mentioned, Anibal Sanchez and Eric Fetty, a third-year pro. So I'm not really sure there's enough there. So that's one tip towards the Dodgers. And then the other way is what we've talked about all year, and it's been the storyline all year for the Nationals is the bullpen. You have Sean Doolittle, who I think has turned into a proven closer. Not really great this year necessarily, but I still think is a proven commodity. You have Sean Doolittle and nobody else in the bullpen.
Absolutely nobody.
Really, just looking at the rest of the team, there's a guy that you know fairly well, Kyle Barraclough, who's hurt right now. Actually, he was actually demoted to the minor leagues because he was struggling so poorly. They had the greatest story in baseball, Trevor Rosenthal, at the beginning of this year, who had an ERA of infinity over his first couple of appearances. He's off the team.
Bullpen years in history at this point.
He's gone. So now you're looking at Wander Suero and Matt Grace as your 7 and 8. Fernando Rodney is back from the grave. He's on this team at age 42. Javi Guerra, who's been around. That's your bullpen. So I don't think. So my question, Max, is that maybe it's a moot point because we've banked on this wild card as a given for the Nationals, regardless of who they play, because you love to think that Max Scherzer is going to go out there and give you a quality start. So maybe, amazing case scenario, he goes out there, 7 innings, 2 runs. And the Nationals have a 2-1 lead over the Phillies or over the Rockies or whoever they end up playing in the wild card. So they lead 2-1 going into the 8th. How do you get out of the game?
Right.
So even if they win that game, if you assume Strasburg and Corbin and Scherzer come out and give you a couple of other good performances against the Dodgers, who's to say that you're going to face Matt Grace in the 8th inning of some game, and then Justin Turner is going to come up and do something against a pitcher like that? So with that in mind, I think that the Nationals absolutely need to do something at the trade deadline. I mentioned in my breakdown they might go after a guy like Tony Watson. If you want somebody who is better in all situations, everybody's talking out of the Giants bullpen about a guy like Will Smith. I think everybody's overlooking Sam Dyson. So it depends on what the Nationals think they want. If they want a closer, maybe they're all in on Will Smith. If you want a setup man, I think you need to go all in on Sam Dyson. If you want a middle innings guy, you go in on Tony Watson. and there are loads of other people out there, but those are 3 guys right there that have been linked to every team, really. But I think Sam Dyson to the Nationals could make a whole lot of sense.
The Nationals, you have to add them into this group of teams. There's a lot of teams that need a reliever.
Absolutely.
But the Nationals are in dire need of a reliever. And you can look at 2 games in their first series since the break against the Phillies.
Critical series as well, if I can interject slightly, because remember, at the break, those were the 2 teams in the wild card.
Right.
And the Nationals were ahead by, I think, a half game or maybe a game. So this was an absolutely critical 3-game series, even though it's in the middle of July. Right. The Nationals took 2 of 3, so that's put them in pole position, at least at this point, puts the Phillies on the outside looking in.
So on Saturday, the Nationals win 4-3. The Nats put up 1 run in the 8th and 2 in the 9th on a Soto home run to go ahead.
Off Hector Neris. Sure.
And off Hector Neris, so Neris got the loss. But this is the best-case scenario for the Nationals bullpen. Wander Suero gets the win because he was pitching the last 2/3 of the 8th inning, and then Doolittle comes in after you score in the 9th, shuts the door, you get the win.
Sure.
The very next day, Tim, on Sunday, the Nationals lose to the Phillies 4-3. Flip the scenario because in the 9th inning, in a tie 3-3 game, Maikel Franco hits a walk-off solo blast off of the bullpen, and who's pitching in a tie game against a division rival in the very last inning? It's Matt Grace. Can Nationals fans sleep at night knowing that is Matt Grace? I'm sure he's a very nice human being.
Sure,
he's a big leaguer.
Absolutely.
But you have to go out and make a move. You can't have Matt Grace as the guy pitching when Maikel Franco is a power-hitting righty, and you have a lefty in there, a lefty specialist, throws an inside fastball, and Maikel Franco just deposits it, and then they win. And the Phillies come out of that series with momentum. If you have other guys in that situation, maybe you go to extras, maybe you sweep that series, Tim, and then we're not talking about, 4-2 out of the break. You're talking about 5-1 heading into a series with the Braves. You win that first game, everything is going well.
Sure.
You make a move, and everything is rolling. But now you can look at that one loss, even if you win 10 in a row, that is the one loss that haunts you because you're in that situation where it's anybody's ball game and you're on the road, which you could be in that wild card game. And that's who you have out there. Maybe Grace ends up doing okay, and maybe Suero is solid, or Rodney comes back and has a resurgent, solid season, but they need to go out and get somebody.
Yeah.
And if they do, I have a lot more faith in this team, and I'm not going to pick them over the Dodgers, but they can hold their own. That's what I will say. They can not get swept, and they can maybe get 2 games in that series, and who knows? Anything can happen in the playoffs. I know MLB is very chalky in terms of who wins a 7-game or a 5-game series, but the Nationals have been there before. The Harper stuff is in the rearview mirror. Rendon will win an MVP at some point, maybe.
Okay.
They have the pieces. If they go out and get a solid reliever, anything's possible.
And I think on the flip side, for the Dodgers, we mentioned that their bullpen is probably in better shape than the Nationals, but I still think that for them to be really comfortable, they absolutely need to make a move to improve their bullpen as well. And honestly, you could go in a couple of different ways here. I like Kenley Jansen. I don't have a problem with him per se, but I'm not sure that I trust him to be the super mega high leverage guy anymore in the 9th inning of a playoff game. I think that this year especially proved to me that there might be some flaws. So if the Dodgers see the same thing, it's going to be tough to swallow that and say, look, we're going to come out and get a new closer to replace the guy that has been our guy for 7-8 years now at this point, being that role for us, maybe even more. So it'll be tough for them to say we're going to go out and get a closer, but I think they have to seriously consider it. And if nothing else, well, now 10 really full years for the Dodgers. That's counting crazy. This year. Yeah,
10 years.
Yeah, at least as a staple. He's a 3-time All-Star.
As a closer, it's been 8 years.
Right. So what do you know? I was right. I get 1 or 2 things right. So my point though is that if they, let's assume that the Dodgers think that Jansen is fine in the role. Okay, possible. So now I really think you do need somebody else because I don't think that the guys that they have right now have proven to be solid enough in that 8th inning role. Pedro Baez has been decent. He's been decent in his career. I don't know that he's been good enough this year. And then Joe Kelly, who they brought in from the Red Sox, somebody they saw plenty of
he got
last
a save
year.
this week.
He throws really hard, but is eminently hittable and is wild. So I don't know that I trust Joe Kelly anymore either. So I think they need somebody else in their bullpen mix as well. We've talked about it for the Yankees. If they get another starting pitcher, that might tip them over the edge. I think if the Dodgers get another reliever, that might tip them over the edge. So I've heard that some teams are looking at Shane Green, who's the closer this year for the Tigers. He's got 25 or so saves. Some teams are looking at contenders, are looking at him as a setup guy. I personally haven't seen him pitch too much this year, but if this year isn't proving that he can be effective in clutch situations, I don't know what more you need to see. So I don't know why he couldn't be a closer for a contending team, but if the Dodgers like him as a setup man for whatever reason, they bring him in to be the 8th guy, bridge it to Kenley Jansen, or you flip it around and you have Green on retainer if Jansen ever struggles, I think all of a sudden that is a much stronger team and gives them a much safer bet to get through the Nationals, sure, and then whoever else they play in the next round and maybe puts them in the driver's seat for the World Series.
I'm in the same boat as you. I don't have anything against Kenley Jansen. I think it's a cool story that he used to catch in the minors, and now he's up with a devastating cut fastball and everything. We're looking up his stats right now. He's gotten 40 saves 3 times in his career. In 2017, he was 5th in the Cy Young Award voting, and he led the league in 41 saves, 15th in MVP voting.
Sure.
But
it's only 2 years ago, but still.
But this year, he's 3-3 in 38 games. He only has 23 saves. So you think for a primetime closer that you would get a lot closer in terms of games pitched and saves.
Sure.
But a lot of things have happened. Only 51 strikeouts, 16 earned runs. He only had 10 earned runs in 2017 in the whole season, and we're already halfway through.
Sure.
So this is the kind of situation where, and I talked about this when I picked the Dodgers to win the World Series, they've lost 2 in a row. There's no way they lose 3 in a row, right?
Never know.
You never know. So that's the thing. They're going to kick themselves all offseason if they get to the World Series or they get to the NLCS and Jansen's just not having a great series, which is very much possible for any player.
Sure.
And that's why money's not an issue. You trade a prospect because you're the best team in baseball. Why not make one extra move to just position yourself even better? It's like you have a test on Monday and it's Friday today. You're thinking to yourself, oh, I'm good. I'm the best in the class. I'm not going to study until Sunday night. That's what a lot of us do. And that's what the Dodgers could do. And for all intents and purposes, they could cruise to the World Series and win it all.
Sure.
But what happens if your calculator dies? Let's say that apparently this is a math test in my analogy here. If you didn't study a little extra on Friday and Saturday and someone gets hurt in your pen, Baez gets hurt, let's say, or Jansen's not having it and your calculator dies, if you had gone out and studied a little more or purchased another calculator or traded your friend a pencil case for a calculator, I'm really going off right now, then you're in a better position on Monday to ace the test or, in this case, to win the World Series. I think that, again, same thing with the Nationals and same thing with every team, really. I mean, this is kind of silly that we're not saying this about every single team. Well, you make an extra move, it's not going to hurt you if you're in the race. I mean, sure, you got to decide if you're going to buy or sell. It's not a question for the Dodgers.
Nope.
So why not trade for Shane Green? Why not get Dyson or whoever's on the market that is affordable and makes sense for your team, righty-lefty matchup-wise? They don't have J.P. Howell. They don't have the lefty specialists that they used to in the pen, at least not to my knowledge. You might need someone to go out there and get an out, and you might have Jansen pitch an extra out, and it comes back to bite you.
We've seen that too. Try to pitch in multiple innings or try to get him 5 outs, and sometimes he gets that first round, the 2 outs in the 8th per se, and then he comes back out and isn't quite able to finish the job. So, I mean, it really depends. We have also seen him be brilliant. I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. You mentioned it 2 years ago, how amazing he was, but it didn't materialize into a World Series. So, It's a question mark. And I think the Dodgers, more so than the Nationals, will be okay if they don't go out and do anything groundbreaking. I don't know that they need Shane Green, for instance, but I do think that they would be in a much better position if they got somebody.
But if he's out there and you don't get him and then you lose because you didn't get an extra arm, you lost your 3rd straight World Series, it's assuming they get there, I think that that's the worst possible case scenario for them.
That's a great point. And the thing is, like, if you're going to look at the other constants between those other teams, there's a constant right there. Is the back end of the bullpen looks the same, right? So I'm not saying that that's the reason that they've lost those 2 World Series. That's incredibly reductive and just not accurate. But, you're going to look at what could we have done different? Could we have changed something in our situation if they lose all 3? If they lose 3 in a row, that's going to be a constant. Yeah. So is it all on Kenley Jansen? Probably not. But, I think they could give him some help.
So from the Nationals and Giants from the Nationals and Dodgers, I just gave it away.
Oh, that's all right.
From the Nationals and Dodgers, 2 teams who are very much selling to the San Francisco Giants, a team that we weren't sure if they were going to be buyers or sellers, but Tim, we talk about hot out of the break.
Yeah.
And I keep saying hot. This is the epitome of hot. They have impressed everybody with their performance since the All-Star break and even leaking into the tail end of the first half. Tell us about just how good this team has been.
Yeah, out of the break, they've won 7 of 8, 6 in a row now after Thursday's results, and they've won 13 out of their last 15 overall. We mentioned last week on the podcast that this would be such a telling stretch for the Giants after this first week out of the break, because look at their schedule. They're on the road, 3 games at the Brewers, 4 games at Colorado, and then home for a couple of games against the Mets, and then a couple of games against the Cubs. So, yeah, the Mets aren't a great team right now, but they're hot. They've won a lot as well. So you're looking at this stretch right here and thinking, getting to about the 22nd of July or whatever, which is the first game against the Cubs. Now you've got a week or so until the deadline. That's going to be the barometer, the measuring stick for the Giants. If they start winning those games, maybe they're suddenly back in the playoff picture and they start to think about acquiring talent. I mentioned all 3 guys in their bullpen seem to have been linked to other teams, quote-unquote contenders all year from end to end, Smith, Dyson, and Tony Watson. But if they are contending, they're not going to trade any of them, and they would look to add the other way. So this is something we mentioned last week. And it's turned into wins. We thought maybe, they could try to split those 7 games. They won 6 of them. Yeah. And moreover, the series at the Rockies has been one of the nuttiest series this year. The Rockies have really fallen off. The corollary to this is the Rockies have been terrible out of the break, especially pitching-wise. Because look at this. In those 4 games against the Rockies, the Giants scored 40 total runs.
19 in one game.
19 in the first game, 11 in the last game, 40 over those total 4 games.
At Coors Field.
It is, but which has helped every team this year. And there's something, I think there's a story there if we put on our journalist caps there a little bit. But at the same time, that's a lot of runs.
Yeah.
Coors Field or not, I don't really care. And then you follow that up with Thursday, a marathon win against the Mets. I turned this game on in extra innings. It went 16. Both teams scored, in the middle innings in regulation, and then Pete Alonso comes in, and it's a solo home run at the top of the 16th. And you're thinking, all right, cool, the Mets are going to get an important win on the road. And then the Giants come back, load the bases against Chris Mazza in the bottom of the 16th with no outs, and then Donovan Solano hits a single to right to win the game.
That's a name right there.
Exactly. So I'm thinking in the bottom of this lineup, I'm like, all right, don't really know who I trust in this Giants lineup, and you go out and get Donovan Solano with a walk-off hit, the second of his career. So, okay, this is in a game where Longoria's hurts. Sandoval had 1 hit. Buster Posey struck out 4 times, first time in his career that had happened.
Wow.
And so the lineup is not great, but you look at the pitching. Fantastic. The reason I turned on this game, Mets and Giants, Noah Syndergaard, 1 run over 7 innings.
Solid.
Madison Bumgarner, 1 run over 9 innings. He pitched every inning in regulation, and they still needed to cobble together 7 innings from everybody else. And my point is that the Giants have found ways to get it done. Buster Posey had a great series against the Rockies, though, in fairness, most other hitters on the team did because of the conditions and the fact that they got to play German Marquez.
Still got to hit the ball, though.
You still have to hit the ball. You don't you can walk a couple of times and luck your way on base, but it's not how it goes. So, my point is that the Giants are suddenly very good. They're hot, one of the hottest teams in the National League. We mentioned the Nationals, probably the hottest team. And all of a sudden, the Giants are now thoroughly in the playoff picture once again. They're 2.5 games out going into action on Friday, and there are only 3 teams between them and the second wild card spot. So they're now ahead of other teams we talked about last week, like the Padres, the Pirates, and the Rockies. The Giants are now in the driver's seat ahead of those teams, and they've got a bunch of teams to beat out. But if they keep this up, if they win this series against the Mets and get 1 or 2 against the Cubs, which are in the playoffs as it stands right now at this minute, I think you start talking about the Giants as maybe being buyers.
Yeah. So I'm going to play devil's advocate here, because here at GoodHacks we like to debate and have a back and forth.
Sounds good.
So you just pulled up the wild card race, and we've got Washington in the first spot, Milwaukee's in the second spot, and then it's St. Louis, Philly, Arizona, and then the Giants. The Giants have a minus 37 differential. So, yes, it would be silly for us to not give this team credit. They've won 13 of their last 15. They are playing at their best right now. One of the best in the league. I don't think any team would want to run into the Giants right now.
Sure.
But here's the question. Sure, all of these trade pieces that if they ended up being sellers would benefit other teams have all come together with older veterans and younger guys, like we talked about on our last podcast, to everybody's contributing and they're winning games. But when you look at the rest of the season as a whole in that division, which besides the Rockies falling off, I think that the rest of the teams in that division are potent. Obviously, the Dodgers are incredible, but the Padres have proven themselves. The Diamondbacks, like I just said, are even closer to the wild card. We haven't talked about them at all this year.
No.
So we'll have to get to that later. But I really want the Giants to do well. I want Bochy's last season to be a playoff run. I want them to break the even year stigma. I want Longoria back in the playoffs. I want Mad Bum pitching 9 innings in a playoff game or coming in extras the day after he started or whatever the case ends up being.
Nuts, yeah.
I want Buster Posey to redeem, a tough season so far. But in my fandom and intuition, and you look at their roster, I just can't see it. I'm fast asleep on this team making the postseason. 2.5 games is very much striking distance, and when they get to the wild card game, we can clip this off and show that I'm a buffoon and that I'm wrong. But like Donovan Solano is the guy that gets you the walk-off big hit. If you're relying on journeyman this would be an absolutely bonkers story, is what I'm trying to say. If all of the planets align and they do make the playoffs.
Yeah.
I just think that there are other teams in the race that are more proven, more deep, more everything. And are the Giants really going to buy? Like, I don't think when you look at a buyer, you look at a team that, they're going to be around for the next few years. I would be worried if I were a Giants fan about buying this year. Like, are you going to trade Bart and get a really great pitcher? Like, we joked about this the other day. Giants are going to trade Bart for Marcus Stroman to get their other ace for the playoff run. That's absurd because they need a catcher for the future. And this is a team that maybe if they did sell, they could compete in that division in 3 years or whatever it is. Rebuilds work. So
if they're run properly.
Right. This is such an important 12 days for the Giants' next 10 years for the franchise, is my overarching statement here.
A really good point.
Because you can't look past the roster as a whole. Yes, they've been hot, but it might not be the worst thing to be conservative and keep the pieces or give away a few guys and get some prospects. Maybe things work out. Otherwise, you're trading for and you're paying more money and you're giving away people that might help the team in a few years. I would just be worried because I don't think that they have enough. I don't know if that's pessimistic. I don't know if that's cynical, but and again, I want them to do well. I sound like Stephen A. ranting about the Miami Heat in the ninth inning of a San Francisco Giants ball game. Donovan Solano should be nowhere near the batter's box, Tim. And believe me, Solano is a friend.
He's a friend. He's a dear, dear friend.
I don't know.
Well, let me advocate the other way, that this is a slightly different Giants team, but you look at the teams that have had success, they have random guys that they have brought in from other random places. And this year is slightly different because they have a core. And to me, they didn't really have as much of a quote-unquote core, an established group of Giants players during those years that they had won all their World Series. They brought in other people. So now they've got those guys still there. You can argue if they're really great players, talking about Belch, Crawford, Panic, and Posey. You can argue, and now bringing Sandoval back, so there's 5 right there that are Giants. They have been on this team for a long time now. And Bumgarner in there as well now, of course. But you look at their World Series teams. They bring in other guys that had made names for themselves elsewhere, but not really. They had just been decent players. I'm talking about Cody Ross, Hunter Pence, Mike Fontenot, Freddie Sanchez, Javier Lopez. These are guys that were they were additions, and none of them were huge names. Cody Ross was not a great MLB player, and he was critical for that one World Series team. Yeah. Hunter Pence has been a good MLB player, and he was honestly just okay for the Giants, but he was good in particular moments. Mike Fontenot was literally a cornerstone of that team, and I saw him play for the Durham Bulls a year or two after that, so how the mighty fall. My point is they bring in all of these other guys. The difference, though, for those other teams, this year they have that hitter core. Those other teams, they had that pitcher core. And I don't know that they have that anymore. Look in the past, guys that got me into the sport. We talked about the old Cardinals in the past with Carpenter and Wainwright. Those guys on the Giants were the same way. Lincecum and Kane to an extent. And you bring in a couple of years ago a guy like Tim Hudson. Barry Zito was an anchor at the beginning. Johnny Cueto, sure. Even Jonathan Sanchez, who I never liked, had a couple of good appearances at times. Ryan Vogelsong was critical, absolutely, and he was, a pirate for a while.
So and even their bullpen too.
That is the big
closers.
Those were so much fun. You had probably the best 7, 8, 9 with Jeremy Affeldt, Javier Lopez, into Brian Wilson and Sergio Romo in there for a time. So those guys were so much fun. I don't know that they have the starters anymore. You have Bumgarner, and then we'll see. And Tyler Beede has been really good. He's a very young player.
He really has.
He's been very good. He's going to start on Friday against the Mets, so we'll see. But then other than that, we don't know.
Samardzija's a solid starter.
He's okay. Right.
Drew Pomeranz has had a very bad year, especially in the first inning of games, which is not what you want in a playoff game.
No, and not as a starter. Right.
So
do they have the pitching core that they used to? They have the bullpen. We just talked about all 3 of their main guys being linked elsewhere. They have a couple of other useful players. Reyes Maranta and Trevor Gott are decent out of the bullpen. So do they have the starters? I don't know that they do. So to echo your point, this is a critical next 10 days for them. So if they decide, look, we're good enough, we have this established player core, we believe that Sandoval and Posey could turn it around and be great impact players for a wild card game and a playoff run, they're going to need to go out and get another starting pitcher. They're going to have to give up somebody good to do that.
I don't want to beat a dead horse because this is just a we'll see conversation. There's so much more time, and even if nothing transpires for this team at the deadline, they're still in the race and things could still happen.
Sure.
But as I did play devil's advocate, what you said really stuck out to me, that they had not no names, but random players come into the artist formerly known as AT&T Park, it's now Oracle Park, and they figure it out.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something in the air by McCovey Cove. It's the most beautiful ballpark in all of Major League Baseball.
It's a take, but not wrong.
And who knows? That's the fun of the playoff race every single year. This is the team in the 2019 playoff race, in my opinion, and it seems like you're on board with this too, that one, if they make it, that would be such a fun story as a baseball fan.
Sure.
2, if they make it, it would be a crazy story in the sense that they have this team, this roster that on paper you wouldn't think is going to make the playoffs, and they do. But again, so many different, routes that this conversation could go, so many different routes that this season could go for them, and no matter how much we could talk for a whole podcast about each different storyline with this team, and at the end of the day, they could lose their next 10, trade the bullpen guys, and be at the bottom of that division for the next 3 years. Or they could trade for somebody, maybe they have some prospects they're willing to give up, they could make a run, and then maybe they become a free agent destination and a big name goes there next year or in the next couple years. So I hate when I say we'll see as a journalist or as a broadcaster, but I can't think of a better phrase than we'll see for this team.
Yeah, something to watch.
So we can go from the Giants right across the bay to the A's. And we talk about a team that we've given so much time and emphasis and focus on with the Giants, with the Nationals. With the A's are a team that, truthfully, we haven't talked about much at all this season, especially in our breakdowns of who we think is going to make the playoffs, who we think is going to make the wild card game. Is it going to be the Indians, the Rays, the Red Sox? Neither of us put the A's. We didn't even give them really a mention, and yet they're the hottest team in the AL right now. Since the 16th of June, same thing with the Nationals, Oakland has increased their postseason odds from 35.9% to 63.8%. They're 18-6 in that time. That's tied for the best record in the American League. You haven't heard much from Chris Davis. Matt Chapman has solidified himself as a very, very solid third baseman.
Great player.
But beyond Mike Fiers throwing that no-hitter and having a good year.
It's a good year.
What is it that's making this team click? Because I looked right past them, and now that's clearly a mistake.
It's tough to tell. I think their starters have been extremely under the radar good. Just looking at their numbers right now, we mentioned Mike Fiers, who's, if you've been with us all year, it's a guy that I've liked for a little while, but hasn't really lived up to my extremely high expectations. But yeah, he's got that no-hitter to kind of bring in some headlines. The only other headline really that I could think of about the A's this year is Frankie Montas, who was amazing at the start of the year, and then it comes out that he's been using a banned substance. So he's shelved. And I think he's coming back theoretically later this year, but part of the rules of the suspension is you're not allowed to pitch in the playoffs. So I'm almost positive about that.
Which is tough for them, because he would be their wild card guy, potentially.
Potentially, it would certainly be in the running. So you can't play in the playoffs. If you're on we need this game 162 to get in the playoffs, he would be your guy, right? Anything else, because he's not going to be available. So you have that wild card, if you pardon poor choice of words. Regardless of that, he was the story at the beginning of out of nowhere how good he was, but now you look at it and say, well, how much of that was him, how much of that is the banned substance? I certainly don't know, so I'm not going to speculate. You have to question it, though. Outside of that, the rest of the starters have been solid, even though, as we mentioned when we talked about Mike Fiers the first time, there's nobody there. People remember Sean Manaea for his no-hitter last year.
Right.
He's been out for the year with an injury. Yep. So you've got, not even a quote-unquote, it's everybody else. Random other people that you don't think of. I'm thinking about Daniel Mengden.
Brett Anderson is a name that you'll recognize, but
perhaps
Daniel Mengden's had a solid year. He's 5-1 so far.
Right, in 9 total starts.
And Liam Hendricks made the All-Star game. He's had a great year.
He's a really interesting story. He used to start. He's from Australia, and he came up through the minors as mostly a starter. But now, like you said, an all-star this year. He used to pitch for the Blue Jays, did a little bit of everything for them. And now this year for the A's, he is a one-and-done type of guy. He's opened, I think, a couple of times, but kind of a hybrid opener where you just pitch an inning and get out. You don't really expect anything more of that. But he's been great in his one inning, and I don't know why they don't consider using him more high leverage, because he's been better than Blake Trinan this year, and it's not even close. So, and Lou Trevino has had his moments, but he gives up home runs. Joakim Soria has been good in the past, average this year. But, I mean, outside of Hendricks and maybe like Yusmeiro Petit in the bullpen's decent. The starters are fine. It's a really solid rotation, and I guess that's what has anchored this team's resurgence, is outside of a guy like Matt Chapman and Matt Olson, who is usually in that mix as the 1-2, usually as the corners of the infield, and since they have similar names, they're usually linked together.
Right.
Chapman is an under-the-radar star, in the league. He's a tremendous player.
Laureano.
Great defensively. Laureano is the second best center fielder in the American
According
League,
to Emma,
depending on who you ask, which we could talk about if we want. I think that's nonsense, but he's certainly very good. He's got an amazing arm and great speed. And then Marcus Semien has had a good year at shortstop.
Piscotty.
And Piscotty is a good player too. And we just named a couple. I just named you a couple of players. The point being that similar to the Giants, they don't really have many amazing players. Now, they do have an all-star hitter in Chapman, and the Giants don't really have somebody like that.
Chris Davis with a K.
Right, it's Chris Davis, who used to be, big home run guy, always hits 247.
He's having a bad year.
He's having a bad year and strikes out a lot.
So I think that this is almost identical to the Giants in the sense that it is a lot of guys, as we will call them, Tim and I, and their rotation is not as strong as others, and their offense is, when it comes together, great. When it doesn't, bad.
Right. And
this is the kind of situation where the AL wildcard race is not as eclectic, I guess, as the NL race is. I think there are less teams
there are a lot fewer,
that will end up, at the end of the day, being in the running. Boston is 2 games out, and you have to assume that Boston ends up as one of those 2 teams when they put it together. Tampa Bay has leaked down a tad. They're tied for the 2nd spot right now, but that's because they've played 6 games in the last week or so against the Yankees, and the Yankees that's their kryptonite.
They cannot beat the Yankees. It's
and then
amazing.
Cleveland is holding on to the top spot, but we've talked about Cleveland a ton, and we don't know if they're going to stick around. So besides those 4 teams, it's Texas, the Angels, and then the White Sox, and you start to talk about teams that are nowhere near. The Angels are 5.5 back, so sure, mathematically they're still in the running,
it's possible.
But who knows? So the big picture thing for me is that the team that wins the AL wild card is just going to lose to the Yankees. You could argue the same thing for the NL. It's kind of like, do you really want to push and make trades and go all out to make the wild card and potentially get to the next round when you have to be realistic? Are you really going to beat the Yankees? The A's lost to the Yankees in the wild card game last year, and if I'm not mistaken, it was a blowout. So
you're right.
What are you really shooting for here? Talk about being pessimistic.
It's an amazing point. I was at Camden Yards a couple of weeks ago just walking through. I wasn't there for a game. I was there for something else. And they have a banner on the side of, I forget the name of the thoroughfare there. They have I think it's 2012 American League Wild Card banner, a pennant, if you will. You've made the playoffs. You have made the postseason. Right. So you've got that literally to show for it. But what do you really have to show for?
What are you shooting for? Like, isn't a World Series title what you really want?
Yes.
Maybe you can sell a few and play for down the road. I'm a big fan of rebuilds, as we've talked about in the past. As a Marlins supporter, I think that's going to work for them. We saw it with the Astros. We've seen it with the Cubs. We've seen it with other teams. I don't know if it's smart for Oakland to make some deals. If they stick with what they have, and they proved this last year, they make the playoffs, they make the wild card game, anybody's game in a wild card game, and then you get to that next series, you probably get beat down by the Yankees. I guess that's a successful year. You're in a division with the Astros. You can't think that you're going to win that division heading into 2019. The Astros are a powerhouse, and if the Yankees weren't playing so well, the Astros would be what we talk about as the best team in the AL.
Probably.
So Oakland is 5.5 back from the Astros. I'm actually surprised that it's not more.
Astros have been average out of the wild card.
But average for their...
Great point.
So, again, I'm being super cynical on this podcast in the sense that even if all the planets align and Oakland makes the playoffs and they win a wild card game against the Rays or Indians or Red Sox or whatever, they probably will get swept or they probably will lose 3 or 4. And that's the end of their season. And is that successful? Are you happy as an A's fan? I guess. You made the playoffs.
Yep.
But the bigger question is, Tim, we looked past this team. Is it time for us to input Oakland as the host or visiting team in the wild card game? Or is it too early to say?
I think it is, I guess, a little too early to say, so maybe we'll say we'll see. But at the same time, I think that the other teams, the other 3 major players in this wild card race are better equipped which is why we didn't talk about Oakland in the first place. So I'm going to resort to what we've done and say that in some order, the Indians, the Rays, and the Red Sox are better equipped to make a postseason run as it stands. And now the interesting thing is that both the A's and the Red Sox have made a trade already as we lead up to the trade deadline in a little less than 2 weeks from this recording. The A's got Homer Bailey, which we never imagined would be a potentially impact trade, but he was solid for them. Let me pull it back up. A quality start in his first appearance with the A's the other day.
Maybe he just needed to change the scenery.
We've said that how many times? He was okay this year for Kansas City, and so 6 innings, 2 total earned runs, 6 strikeouts, no walks. So that's a really solid debut.
Yeah.
And if he can become a 3 or 4 for the A's behind Fires and Brett Anderson, like we said, you would absolutely take that. They gave up a minor league shortstop that I don't know. Doesn't mean that he's not good.
Well, if you don't know who he is, he must not be good.
I doubt that highly. That's putting way too much on me. The point is, he's not an amazing prospect. So could he become, an important player for the Royals? Sure. Not anytime soon is the point. So they bought low for Homer Bailey, who had like a 6+ ERA his last couple of years with the Reds. So this it could be an important move for them in the stretch. And we talked a little bit about the Red Sox. We talked last week about they maybe not needing as desperately to make a move because Nathan Eovaldi is set to come back. He's making a couple of rehab appearances this week for AAA. And so now that the bullpen is maybe set, they went out and needed to get a starter, and so the starter they got was Andrew Cashner. And he's had a resurgent year for maybe the worst team in the league, the Orioles, after being very mediocre for the remainder of his career with the Padres and a couple of other teams. He's been okay this year, so maybe that's now your 4th or 5th starter along with Eduardo Rodriguez.
I think you take Cashner as, he didn't have a tremendous first outing with the Red Sox, but you have to assume that he'll have some quality starts and get you some wins. It has to be a positive move. And if it doesn't work out, you didn't give up too much, so it doesn't work out.
So and that's the thing, you're right, is that even if he is your 5th starter, that just gives you somebody else to throw some innings in the regular season and hopefully help you get a couple of wins.
He's not pitching the wild card game.
And you can leave him off for the playoffs as well. I think you would like to leave Eduardo Rodriguez off or have him be a long relief type of guy. Yeah. So you would like another starter in the mix. So I don't know that they're done, but Dave Dombrowski has hinted that maybe he is. I know he's a little bit evasive, so you maybe not take him fully at face value. But the point is they have somebody else in the mix. But those 2 guys, 2 different starters on the move. I expect we'll see a lot more over the next 10 days. We'll talk about that a little bit more, perhaps next weekend, our final trade deadline preview, and then we'll have a recap as well. But there's another guy out there, actually, that has recently been traded that might even be more important.
Right, and before we get to that, also, the Cubs made the trade for Martin Maldonado because Wilson Contreras goes down on the IL. You need somebody to back up Victor Caratini, and that's who they get. But it sucks because the Cubs gave up Mike Montgomery, who got the last out for them when they won the World Series after the long drought. So sentimentally, that trade means a lot, but good for them to get a backup catcher. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, no, it's important. Even when Contreras comes back, they'll have an actually established guy who used to start for the Brewers for a little bit there. Yeah. So, it's
when the rosters open up some more, it does not hurt to have a third catcher.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. But Cashner, Maldonado, and Montgomery, and then Homer Bailey. Those are 3 important trades over a week out from the deadline, but they are not the most important trade in our humble GoodHacks opinion. Terrence Gore has been picked up by the Yankees for cash considerations. Now, I don't know much about considerations. I heard he's been solid in AAA.
I don't know. He gets moved around a lot, you'd find.
On a serious note, Gore going to the Yankees is an absolute steal, Tim. No pun intended. Gore was huge for the Royals as the epitome of a pinch runner. He's not going to give you much with a bat. I don't think he's going to give you much with the glove or arm in the field. But think about this for the Yankees. And we've talked so much about how they are really deep, but their depth, they don't really have a leadoff guy. They don't have a guy who's going to steal bases. It's Encarnacion, Sanchez, Judge, Stanton. All of those guys are not going to steal bases. So you get to a very important situation down the stretch, regular season or playoffs alike. Sanchez gets a single. You need the run to score. You put Terrence Gore on first base. He's going to steal you at least one bag, and he's going to score on any gray line. Like, I wonder if he's going to score from first on a double, or I wonder if he's going to score from second on a single.
Sure.
He's one of the fastest in the majors. Maybe not as much anymore. Obviously, he's aging a little bit, but he played for KC from 2014 to 2017, went to the Cubs in 2018, and then came back to the Royals this year. How many steals does he have in his career? 40.
13 this year.
Wow. I mean, I didn't even realize he had played that much this year, I guess, because Kansas City's
played
not
more
doing
this
that
year,
much.
right? Actually
But
get some at bats.
He is incredibly reliable in terms of getting you that one steal that you need. And before we went live, I was talking about how he might give the Yankees a Dave Roberts kind of steal. Remember how Dave Roberts stole a bag for the Red Sox in 2004, which led to the 4 games in a row when the Yankees were up 3-0.
Okay.
Off Mariano Rivera. He ends up scoring. They win that series. It's crucial for the Yankees, who didn't up to this point. I mean, who's their best base stealer? Brett Gardner?
Probably.
Right. So now they have someone who gets a steal sign, changes the pitcher's approach. You put him on, he doesn't even have to steal, but he makes the pitcher change his approach.
That could be critical. Yeah.
And all they gave up was cash considerations. Obviously not an actual person. They have so much money. They could give up cash considerations for everything, it seems. New batting cages, new whatever. And this is only going to help them. And that's why I think that this is the biggest deal so far.
I think it's a really interesting point, one that has gone completely under the radar. Now, I think that so 2 points here on this. The first off is I don't know where he's going right now because the roster.
Okay.
I think Mike Tauchman has been up this week, and I watched most of the series against the Rays just to get a good picture of the wild card. So maybe you send Mike Tauchman back down with Stanton still out for who knows how long. So you've got Gore really sitting on the bench. You mentioned it this year. This year he actually is finally getting some at-bats. And just pulling up his stats, he didn't have his first career hit until last year, but he had, I don't know, 20.
That's crazy.
He had 20 career at-bats in his first,
oh my gosh,
4 total seasons in the majors. But he only played 70 fewer than that regular season games, 55 or so.
That's wild, Tim.
So last year at the Cubs, he had his first hit, and this year he's got 14 hits. So he's hitting 275 in limited action.
He had been in the league for 5 years,
right,
and he didn't have a hit.
1 at-bat, 3 at-bats, 3 at-bats, 4, and then 5 last year with the Cubs. So he didn't have any chances.
And it was just a single.
Right.
And he didn't even get to second.
What a shame.
Wow.
But the point so I don't know where he goes for the Yankees right now, and obviously you mentioned the rosters do expand, funny thing with baseball. So when that happens for the playoff run, he'll have a spot in the dugout, no question. So that's for Aaron Boone, Brian Cashman, and company to figure out right now. My guess is he'll be on the big league team more or less, if not on a shuttle.
Or he goes up
so he was
for Maben.
Right. Okay, sure.
But
he was DFA'd, so maybe he'll just report to Scranton and we'll start from there. So that's my guess, and he'll come up soon. The other point is to echo something that you said. We've talked about all of these other contending teams that are going to need to go out and get something big. I still think the Yankees need a starter. I think if the Red Sox want to make something, they're going to need a starter. If the Rays need to make something, or if they're going to make a run, they need another hitter. We talk about the Nationals needing a critical guy in the bullpen. Bullpen guys are usually under the radar, but if you've got somebody that pitches the 8th or 9th inning, they'll have some scrutiny. My point here is that I think in so many other championship teams, in baseball and other professional sports, there are moves made or just unsung heroes that step up and end up being an understated but critically important part of a championship team. So in the NBA, you need a depth guy, a veteran who's going to come out and hit some three-pointers, hit some free throws, make some passes, maybe play some defense, heaven forbid. That's the type of player you might want to pick up. Now, is that somebody that's been on your bench? Maybe. So this year for the Raptors, maybe a guy like Fred VanVleet, who plays some important minutes, hits some big shots. In the NHL, you want a guy who's going to maybe score you some goals, but more importantly, win you some face-offs, play defense, play minutes, get stuff, moments like that, contributions like that. These are players that are traded all the time. A third or fourth line center that come in, maybe you score a goal in the championship, in the Stanley Cup final. Maybe that happens and that's a cool moment. But otherwise, they are just unsung heroes that come in and play big roles in moments that are generally overlooked. They're coaches, players type of deal. In football, I guess there's less of a concrete example, but somebody that makes a big catch or deflects a pass.
Tyree type.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Mario Manningham, same deal.
Right.
So that's not a huge player. That's not a Hall of Fame player, but they make that type of play when it matters most. So I think that Terrence Gore, maybe he never gets an at-bat for the Yankees outside of, Aaron Judge needs an off day and Stanton is still hurt, so you're going to start him. He'll come in and play right field for the final 3 innings, so maybe he gets an at-bat. I don't know. Outside of that, he's not going to play a huge role in that offense because it's so good, but he is the type of player that could turn in a moment you mentioned like a Dave Roberts type moment that ends up winning the Yankees the World Series.
Absolutely. And the trend so far has been we'll see. Maybe he doesn't have an impact, but for what they gave up to get him,
nothing at all.
And the rosters expand, it's not like you had to demote Clint Frazier for him to play, So we'll see. That's all we can say. We'll see about the Nationals. We'll see about the Giants. We'll see about Terrence Gore. We'll see about some other trades. And we got to tell you that the trade deadline is 12 days away as of Friday. We're going to have a lot more content on the way. Our next podcast is just going to be devoted to maybe what trades we think are going to transpire and what trades will not transpire that we think should. We'll answer every question. If you guys have any questions, please reach out. You know how to. And we just want to talk and touch every base, no pun intended, and try to figure out what is going to happen. A lot of deals will be made. But remember that there's no more late August deadline. It's July 31st. Everything has to happen by then, I believe.
That's right.
So if there are teams that are playing well, like the Giants, who might need to make a move, it's now or never. And we're going to talk about everything. So Season 2, Episode 2 is a wrap. Thank you guys for joining us. And we'll see you next week. It's going to be a lot of fun. Trade deadline up soon. And we'll see you then.